Kenyans, and particularly Kenyan politicians, should be careful not to destroy things built over years of hard work and sacrifice. It is easier to tear down than to build up, but it's dangerous and it must stop. This is particularly true for the Constitution. Kenya's Constitution is remarkable, and it enshrines fundamental values and guarantees the rights of citizens. It came out of a period of deep pain for the country. Many of today's politicians and leaders had crucial roles in drafting it and explaining it to the Kenyan people. Solutions to Kenya's current challenges must be found in its Constitution, not outside of it. Only the Constitution guarantees rights and justice for all and can build a country that is fair for everyone, not just those with wealth and power. This election must be held in accord with the Constitution and the laws as interpreted by the courts. Attempts to change the law at the last minute are also not helpful, and we call again on President Kenyatta not to sign the electoral law amendments that are now on his desk. While time is extremely brief, we again urge all parties to engage in serious dialogue with the IEBC and to cease any interference in its operation. Following the Supreme Court decision, the IEBC has made changes in personnel and procedures that address many of the concerns raised and that strengthen its technical ability to conduct an election. We urge all parties to work collaboratively and in good faith on any additional changes that will further strengthen this essential institution and allow the best possible election. We respect the right of NASA candidates Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka to withdraw their candidacies, but we regret their decision. We've been engaged in efforts to find a way that will encourage them to rejoin and continue to hope they will do so in light of the progress made at the IEBC and our shared commitment to the democratic electoral process. The new election must be carried out in accordance with the Constitution and the court order, but it's vital that it be credible and be held in a competitive, peaceful, and participatory environment. Respect for the law is vital for every Kenyan. Once again, we strongly urge the security services to protect the rights of demonstrators and to use minimum force when seeking to protect lives and property. We believe it's essential that police supervisors and officers who commit wrongdoing be prosecuted and punished. Similarly, while demonstrators have a right to have their voice heard, they must do so peacefully and with full respect for others' welfare and property. Attacks on the IEBC staff must stop. No one is obliged to stand for office or to vote if they do not wish to, but no one should use violence or intimidation to disrupt the right of others to vote or to participate. Doing so is profoundly undemocratic, and leaders must tell their supporters to refrain from such actions. In the coming days, the whole world will be watching Kenya and its every step in this electoral process. In particular, we are following closely the actions of leaders and politicians. Those who incite violence or undermine democracy should be held to account for their actions. Kenyans are fortunate in having the right to choose their leaders. This is one of the great things about being a Kenyan. Not everyone in the world enjoys this right, and it is precious. When this election is held, Kenyans may choose to vote or not, to support whichever candidate they choose, or none, to express their views peacefully to whomever will listen, in whatever forum they think best. Now and after the election, we urge Kenyans to renew and redouble their national dialogue about how to unite the country, end ethnic and tribal conflict, and allow everyone to share in the country's bounty. Above all, in the days ahead, we urge Kenyans to choose Kenya, to work in word and deed for the common good of this great country. We stand with you in this important work. Thank you very much. That's our statement, and we're now happy collectively and to take questions. Please.
My name is Geoffrey Mosoku from The Standard. Listening to your statement, it's not clear what you are calling for. Are you, because there have been calls of calling off the elections or proceeding with the elections. Your statement appears to be vague, doesn't clearly state whether you're supporting elections to be held on Thursday or not, and what's the solution you are suggesting in terms of those who have opposed?
So, clearly, Kenya's constitution sets out a 60-day time period for a new election, and the Supreme Court ordered that on the 1st of September that the new election be carried out in 60 days, in other words, by the 31st of October. The parties are free to request an extension beyond the 60 days. There are, of course, several cases which are currently in court that would have that effect. Obviously, the question of an extension or not is a highly politically charged issue. And this is a decision which really, at the end of the day, belongs to the courts. Kenyans can go to the courts, ask for this extension, ask for it to happen. And if they do so, and if the courts grant it, we would be fine with it. We would have no objection to an extension in the timeline. But this is a decision that ultimately the courts themselves would have to make. Let me see if my colleagues have anything they'd like to add to that. Okay. Go over here.
Thank you. My name is Luca, which I write for the Star newspaper. I have two questions. Given the statement by Roslyn Akombe, the former commissioner, and the IEBC chair, Chief Bukati, the following day, are you, as a foreign envoys, confident that this election is going to be free and fair? Are you contented with the preparation so far? And again, the Financial Times yesterday cited US and Britain of being unhelpful in the Kenyan situation. They said you are just interested in quick fix with the disregard to a credible process. What's your take?
We are absolutely committed to a credible process. We are not interested in quick fixes or anything else. What we're interested in is a free, fair, credible, and peaceful election. We have called for changes in the wake of the Supreme Court decision to the IEBC's personnel and procedures. The IEBC has made changes. Ultimately, whether or not this election should take place on the 26th is a question for the IEBC, and it's a question, if somebody goes to the courts or any of the existing cases are resolved, for the courts. And we will be looking at the process that takes place whenever the election is held to determine whether or not we judge it to be credible. Obviously, we're going to take many, many factors into account. What's essential is that, again, the Constitution be respected and that the laws be respected here, and that Kenyans make the decision about how to proceed with this election. Comments from my colleagues?
I would just add that, as we said in our statement, the Kenyan Constitution comes out of a really painful period in this country's history. And there are ways of pushing the date back within that Constitution if the courts so decide. Equally, there is a Supreme Court order and a constitutional provision that says it must be done this month. Our point is, you need to stick by that Constitution and those laws at that point and let that process work. You cannot operate outside it.
And I would just underscore as well my comment in the statement, or our comment in the statement, that it's essential that the IEBC take very seriously, obviously, the comments of the chairman, but also the comments and concerns which were raised by Rosalind Akombe. These are serious issues. They do need to be addressed. The proper place to address them in the first instance is inside the IEBC, and for them to make decisions, and for those who have concerns to raise them through the courts or through other processes and procedures.
And also, let me add one thing, that for those who try to portray the US and UK, you don't see only the US and the UK here. There are 20 ambassadors signing. There is a common position that we are proposing to you. So there's a solidarity of a much wider group, including all the ambassadors that are here and the others that couldn't turn up, but whose signature you will see on the statement.
Thank you. Yes.
Zenzi Kibik with KTN News. You've mentioned the issue of Akombe resigning. Fletcher Bukati has also hinted on the issue of political interference. IEBC officials have also expressed their fears for their families and really for themselves. What is your addition on that? And also still on the matter of security, we saw the UK and the US say that they will help when it comes to investigations of Msando, the former ICT head at IEBC. Where is that? And so far, how have you come with that?
So with respect to political interference in the IEBC, I want to make clear that it is, from our perspective, not acceptable to have political interference in the operations of the IEBC. I think both sides have taken steps, taken actions, done things from time to time which are of concern. And I would just underscore, as I said during the statement, that it should cease. It is critically important that this institution, and indeed all of Kenya's institutions, the judiciary, everybody, be protected so that professionals can do their jobs, carry out the laws, carry out their tasks and their missions without interference. Undermining these institutions fundamentally undermines democracy. And so it really is very, very important that they be permitted to do their jobs, that they be protected, that they not be attacked. And we have offered assistance on things like the Chris Msando's death. You'll have to ask the Kenyan government about the question of progress in bringing a prosecution against someone. We do hope in the very near future that something will happen. We would certainly urge rapid action, because murder is absolutely unacceptable, and people need to be prosecuted and held to account when they do that. Colleagues, please.
Is it technically, thank you, is it technically possible to hold a credible election on Thursday as scheduled? And if it is, and we're talking about an issue of political credibility, where does the answer to that question come from? Embedded in that is the idea, do you think it's possible to hold a politically credible election on Thursday? But who does one look to for political credibility as institutions are fracturing on the question?
So, I mean, again, I would just underscore that there is plainly a constitution here, and there's a legal process that's available to anyone who has concerns about either technical or political issues around this election, and that's the proper place for these decisions to be made. You know, I'm not a technical expert on elections. I can tell you the IEBC, as I said, has done quite a number of things, everything from taking some steps to improve results transmission to better training for officers, poll agents and the like. And changes in personnel. So they've done a number of things to improve the technical process. And the IEBC is the place to get the answer. Certainly Wafula Chebukate and his colleagues are the place to get the answer about whether or not they feel technically prepared. I would say the bigger issue and the bigger challenge is on the political front. That's where there is a real question mark around this election. And it's a serious one, and fundamentally it's one that the Kenyan people need to ask themselves, and ultimately this, if again somebody goes to the Supreme Court, that needs to be resolved in the Supreme Court. You know, I would just make this point as well without, I don't want to suggest by this remark that I'm saying the election has to be held on October 26th, because I'm not. But this election cycle at some point does have to come to an end. So a path forward needs to be found that allows this process to conclude, whatever the final decision is on the date.
Sorry. I'm Sebastian Nemeth from Radio France International. If I understood you well on your communication, you said you had a message towards President Kenyatta asking him not to sign the electoral bill that's on his desk at the moment. Apparently, he's willing to sign it. What are the concerns that this text is raising in your mind if it's going to be signed, and what can you tell the president so that he won't do it?
Well, we have urged, you know, the government of Kenya, President Kenyatta, not to sign the electoral laws amendments. We urged the National Assembly and the Senate not to pass it when it was still in a bill form before the legislature. Look, it's very clear that international best practice precludes or says don't put into place new electoral laws days before an election. Unless there is some really compelling reason and there's broad agreement to do so, it's not fair. And we think that signing those laws into place days before the election would undermine the credibility of the election. And so we would again urge him not to do it. We'll get back to you in just a second. Let's this gentleman here.
My name is Kennedy Murithi from NTV. You've basically said you've thrown back the ball to the Kenyans and the bodies with which they are tasked with this election. But you, as the observers, having ears on the ground, do you believe that the IEBC or any preparations with regards to the August 26 elections have been made, and the preparations are actually, it's all systems go?
You know, again, I'm not a technical expert in elections, and I'm not here to, this is not a professional electoral observation mission here. We're ambassadors and high commissioners. We have obviously provided some support and assistance, and we do have some insight into the processes and procedures, the things that have been done to prepare for this election. But whether or not the IEBC is ready has got to be, in the first instance, a judgment for the chairman of the IEBC, his commissioners, and the Secretariat. That's the first place for that judgment to be made. And I'm looking to them to ultimately make a decision and a conclusion about whether they're ready. And if they say they're not, then, and they choose to go to the court and ask for additional time, and the court grants it, we would be fine with it. Similarly, we'd be fine with the parties doing this. Obviously, we have serious concerns, and I don't want to minimize those concerns. Clearly, the Supreme Court said on September 1st there were irregularities and illegalities about the last election. Those need to be corrected. I'm aware of a number of things the IEBC has done to correct them. There's still more to go. But whether or not they're going to be able to get this all done by next Thursday is a question, as I said, in the first instance for them.
Perhaps I can just add something on your question. If you...
Okay.
Sorry.
Please.
I stood on my American colleague's foot there. That's not diplomatic. If you... Sorry.
Please.
If you look at what Mr. Chebukati said in his statement of last week, the main issues that he's raising are issues that politicians can fix. So he's saying, I worry about this election because people are attacking my staff when they're trying to organize training courses. I've got people trying to do their jobs as public servants and they're being intimidated and they can't come to work in certain parts of the country. He's saying political parties are reaching into my commission and trying to push us in different directions, and that's not acceptable because we're independent. These are problems that politicians can fix, and they can be fixed quickly. And as we've said in our statement, it would be a profoundly undemocratic act to try to interfere through intimidation or violence with the holding of an election under Kenya's constitution. And we've called on the side that is doing that to stop. We've also called on both sides to stop trying to reach into the Electoral Commission. It needs to be allowed to be independent. But these are political reasons why Mr. Chebukati has expressed his concerns, and they need to be fixed by politicians, and that's the call that we're issuing today.
It is the fundamental challenge to address this issue of political interference. It is a huge problem, and it does need to stop. Okay. Maybe the gentleman back. I'll come to you after that, but the gentleman.
George Obulutsa, Reuters News. Two questions. You made a mention of, maybe urging police to use restraint when dealing with the whatever protests and so on. And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts with regard to the fact that arising from that previous election, the likes of IPOA have not shown any progress in doing investigations and so on, including the fact that a child was killed, during the aftermath of that. And second, I don't know what are your thoughts with regard to the fact that today, there are warrants out for certain opposition leaders for interfering with the IEBC's work. And this particular name is Outa and Ruth Odinga. Thanks.
With respect to the warrants, I really don't have any information about those warrants or about what's going on. So I'm not in a position to comment about that. On your first question, though, I would just underscore that excessive use of force by the security services has been a problem in Kenya, a serious problem. And it's vitally important that the security forces use the minimum possible force and only use it when absolutely necessary to protect lives and property. We've talked with the government about this privately. We've talked with government officials about it publicly. Obviously, we've called on many, many occasions for them to respect the rights of people who are peacefully demonstrating. We're aware that they are seeking to take steps to improve. They've made a number of commitments. We've certainly heard the calls by senior Kenyan officials for the police to respect the rights of demonstrators. And I would say that we've also encouraged the prosecution, investigations and prosecution of anybody found to use excessive force. We've provided, the United States has provided major support to IPOA, millions of dollars worth of assistance in training and equipping. And investigations are underway. I can't tell you what the specific statistics are at this moment, but I do know that they are seeking to ensure that police officers who do wrong are held to account for that. I do think it's worth checking, and we can do that on exactly what the statistics are and exactly what the situation is. But we've been very clear, publicly and privately, about holding the security services to account for their actions. I promise this lady here.
Hi, Neha Wadekar with Foreign Policy. You characterized your response to Raila's decision to not be considered in the election as one of regret. I was curious if you think that there can be sort of a fair and credible vote that reflects the will of the nation, given that there might be a lot of voters who do stay home in response to his announcement. And I'm curious how you would characterize it. Would you characterize it as irresponsible of him to call for these reforms and then take himself off the list? Well,
I certainly would much prefer, and the United States would much prefer, and I think my colleagues would share this view, if NASA were participating in this election, if Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka were participating. They won a historic decision on the 1st of September. And they got an opportunity for a new vote. And it would be better, I think, for the country if they were participating, because it would give the millions of voters who support them an opportunity to express their views at the ballot box. But fundamentally, it's their decision, and I respect their right to make this decision and to boycott. The only thing I would ask is that they do it peacefully and ensure that their supporters do it peacefully. Clearly they've called for reforms, and some of the things that they've asked for have been done, but some not. And I don't want to minimize the problems that the IEBC has had. They have been serious, clearly. The Supreme Court found that, and we fully subscribe and agree with what the Supreme Court found. But again, we do think many reforms have been made, and we would have preferred if they could participate in the election. Colleagues? Okay. Maybe the gentleman back here, and then we'll come to you again.
Hello, Nicolas Delaunay from Agence France Presse. The decision by the Supreme Court was described as an opportunity for Kenya to strengthen democracy. I'd like your opinion on whether Kenya has been up to the task, and specifically their political leaders, have they been up to the task? Second question would be, in this very controversial environment, do you see any positive?
Frankly, the Supreme Court's decision was historic, and it was a remarkable opportunity for Kenya to strengthen its democracy and its institutions. It clearly signaled in a powerful way the independence of the judiciary, and really underscored, how really wonderful this new constitution is. And I do think it shows over the years a very impressive evolution, certainly in the judiciary, certainly in the Supreme Court, that they were able to make such a decision, and that the parties respected it and then moved to a new election. As I said in response to the last question, it would have been my strong preference if all parties were participating in this new election, whether it's held on October 26th or whenever it might be held. It would be better for Kenya. It frankly would have been better If after the 1st of September there had been more dialogue, IEBC with the parties, with the leaders, if people had been able to come together at that moment and say, how can we work together to strengthen this country, strengthen the IEBC, hold the best possible election? Obviously enough, that did not happen in the way we would have liked to see. And that is an unfortunate, it's an unfortunate thing. It's an unfortunate thing for Kenya. That said, steps have been taken, and there is a proper process and procedure for getting further extensions or addressing concerns or grievances about the way this process is unfolded, and I would be quite fine with any Kenyan choosing to avail themselves of those processes and procedures underneath the Constitution. Colleagues, okay, please.
I just wanted to make a follow-up. We are aware you've been holding meetings with the political parties. You've met the president's side, you've met the opposition, including a meeting which was held this morning. From what you've been discussing, what are the proposals that you have offered on the table? What has been accepted, what has been rejected, and does it mean that those talks or discussions that you are initiated have not borne any fruit coming today?
We obviously enough have in the past diplomats working, frankly, with many Kenyans in some instances have sought to help bridge divides and resolve differences and bring people together, including the political parties. And as we said in our statement, we have had some discussions underway. I'm not going to go into the particulars and the details of all of it. I will say that I think we made some progress in this. At the same time, there are big differences of view that remain. I continue to hope that even now, at this last minute, that there will be a possibility of an agreement. That is what would be best for the people of Kenya. A genuine dialogue, a genuine agreement that allowed the best possible election to take place, whenever it is, that would unite the Kenyan people, that would reaffirm your constitution, that would truly help bring prosperity and secure democracy for this country. But we'll see what happens. Ultimately, only Kenyans, politicians and Kenya's leaders can make these decisions. We can't make those decisions for them. We can help, and we're trying to. Colleagues? Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
I think this gentleman, do you have something back there?
Yes, I have a question. In this one statement, you seem to suggest that there have been changes in IEBC, so elections should go on. At the same time, you seem to appreciate the concerns and the comments by Rosalina Kombe and the chairman, which are clearly two conflicting positions. Are you sure you are providing leadership in this case?
I could see that coming.
I absolutely think, first of all, that we've been quite clear about all of this. And I just want to underscore that this is a decision for Kenyans. This is a decision for you under your constitution. This is a decision for your leaders and for your institutions. This is not a decision for me as the American ambassador or for my colleagues to make. Yes, there are serious problems with the way the IEBC has been run. We've heard about them in a powerful way from Rosalina Kombe. We heard about them in a powerful way from Wafula Chebukati. At the same time, they have taken steps to address those problems and concerns and to address those issues. And it's ultimately their decision when this election, together with the courts, if a court case goes forward, when this decision is made or when the election proceeds. It's their decision. It's the decision that should be made underneath the Constitution. And I would encourage, again, anyone who's got a concern or a complaint to use the proper process under the Constitution. Okay, thank you all very much.